10 incredibly bizarre ways people died in ancient Greece. You will never guess what the number one death is. Like and subscribe for weekly videos. In the comments below, list one topic you think should be in a top 10 video and comment if you subscribe to this channel. Scarcely anybody in old Greece kicked the bucket with nobility. Accounts of incredible Greek legends kicking the bucket unobtrusively in their rest are rare, or in any event are obscured by accounts of individuals hauled by chariots and cut in their tendons. These peculiar passings aren't only an antiquated history thing, they struck the Greeks more than anybody. Maybe it was on the grounds that they attempted things that others didn't have the fortitude to endeavor, or maybe they basically knew not to pollute a decent story with realities. We will never realize sure what was going on, yet dependent on the accounts the old Greeks abandoned, Greece in its prime was a nation overwhelmed with a pandemic of ludicrous, Looney Tunes-like passings. 10 Bupalus was insulted so bad that he killed himself. Hipponax was a writer, or if nothing else that is the thing that the Greeks called him, for absence of a superior word. He didn't actually expound on blossoms and dragonflies. In his sonnets, it was uncommon to endure in excess of a couple of words without a reference to human waste or fellatio. He was additionally one of the ugliest men ever, so it probably won't be astounding that when he proposed to his one genuine affection, she turned him down. After that sort of misfortune, most would proceed onward and discover another person. However, Hipponax wasn't the kind of individual to take the higher street. All things being equal, he composed a progression of sonnets offending her dad, Bupalus, which hit hard enough that Bupalus hung himself. Most of Hipponax's abuses are lost to time, however the couple of pieces left have a sufficient subject to fill in the spaces. One line considers Bupalus a god-forsaken blackguard, who used to jab his dozing mother's ocean anemone. Another says that Bupalus jumped at the chance to get fellatio from his own mom. 9 Chrysippus died from laughing at his own joke. Chrysippus was one of the main Stoic rationalists, however he didn't actually satisfy the name. The Greeks called him a man of surpassing self-importance, so maybe it's fitting that he kicked the bucket chuckling at his own joke. Chrysippus was incredibly productive, and he had a pretty turned funny bone. Throughout an incredible span, he composed 705 separate books. Most have been lost, yet we're informed that his most popular work was one about the goddess Juno being a whore, which as per the Greeks, nobody could rehash without dirtying his mouth. Chrysippus met his end one day when he saw a jackass eating figs and concluded that the creature, battling with the clingy organic product, was the most entertaining thing he'd actually found in his life. So he got the jackass flushed, and clearly, that made things so comical that he giggled himself to death. 8 Draco was smothered to death by gifts. The man whose cruel laws motivated draconian passed on him without a doubt the last way you'd anticipate. Draco was a man who felt that taking cabbages ought to be deserving of death, yet he was so all-around cherished that he wound up being in a real sense squashed under the heaviness of his own popularity. Draco, the legend goes, was at the auditorium in Aeschylus when his allies chose to tell him the amount they adored him. So they began tossing their caps, shirts, and shrouds at him. This was the means by which old Greeks indicated thankfulness, by ripping the garments off their body and tossing them at you. Draco's fans moved somewhat diverted, and he wound up being totally covered under their flung tunics. He choked to death under the heaviness of the dress of many sweat-soaked Greek men. 7 Heraclitus covered himself in poo and was eaten by dogs. The thinker Heraclitus passing may sound somewhat odd, yet there was an explanation. He was canvassed in crap and sticking around eager canines. It was certainly not a valid justification using any and all means, however it was a reason. Heraclitus had dropsy-edema/expanding, and however the specialists let him know there was no fix, he figured he could outfox them all. By purging the digestive organs, he let them know, one could draw off the dampness. The specialists didn't have the foggiest idea what on the planet he was discussing, yet evidently, draw off the dampness was his method of saying, I will cover my whole body in bovine dung. It's not completely clear why Heraclitus figured covering himself in cow fertilizer would fix him, or why he disregarded all the specialists who disclosed to him in any case. In any case, he went through the day laying in the sun canvassed in fertilizer. At the point when he woke up, the compost was thick to such an extent that he was unable to move. He lay there, shrouded in solidified excrement, attempting to stand up, until wild canines went along and ate up him alive. 6. Thucydides died in mid-sentence. Thucydides composed the history of the Peloponnesian War, and it's one of the most dependable sources on the war that we have. He's likewise viewed as one of the most dependable hotspots for antiquated Greek history. Thucydides was one of only a handful rare sorts of people who didn't pepper his accounts with gossipy tidbits and legendary animals, which makes it a disgrace that someone executed him right while he was trying to composing the history. Thucydides had really battled in the Peloponnesian War, however got kicked out of Greece for neglecting to guard the city of Amphipolis. For quite a long time, he lived in a state of banishment, assembling his set of experiences until, at some point, it was governed he could return. The Greeks sent him word, and an energetic Thucydides hurried back to see his country again. And then he was killed. We don't actually know the subtleties. Then again, actually someone murdered him in transit and that he was trying to composing a sentence when it occurred. His book, right up till the present time, closes directly in center of an idea he never wrapped up. 5. Pyrrhus died when an old woman dropped a floor tile on his head. The amazing Greek general Pyrrhus wasn't a man to remain by the sidelines while his men did the battling. He raced in to fight on the cutting edges, taking a chance with his own existence with his men. Along these lines, when he pursued his military the roads of Argos, he was prepared to pass on a hero's death. He was likely somewhat less fit to be murdered by an older lady, yet you don't generally get what you want. The elderly person was viewing from the housetops when Pyrrhus' military walked in. Her child figured out how to hit Pyrrhus in the breastplate with his lance, and that landed him in Pyrrhus' sights. He closed in to make the final blow, yet he had no clue about that this current man's mom was watching him and that she wasn't going to let anybody hurt her little boy. The elderly person dropped a story tile and hit Pyrrhus square in the head. It squashed his vertebrae and sent him smashing off of his pony. He was as yet alive, however, for the moment. Another warrior hauled Pyrrhus into the flight of stairs to give him a speedy, clean demise by execution. Notwithstanding, Pyrrhus was gazing at the trooper, and he got apprehensive. He missed and hit Pyrrhus square in the jaw, all things considered. He needed to take several additional swings to put Pyrrhus out of his hopelessness. 4. Philitas starved to death correcting other people's errors. Philitas was conceived in some unacceptable age. In the time of internet analysts, he would have been the best, or if nothing else would have a fair assortment of uncommon pepes. Yet, in the Greek time, he didn't become anything in excess of a preventative tale. He invested his energy amending individuals' blunders. Each time someone utilized some unacceptable word or committed a coherent error, he'd review paper after paper clarifying what they'd fouled up. He got so gotten up to speed keeping in touch with them that, legend has it, he starved to death while pompously calling attention to a helpless word choice. It turned into his heritage. His burial place was engraved with the words, "Stranger, Philitas is my name. I lie killed by fraudulent contentions, and cares extended from the night as the night progressed." 3. Arrichion was the first corpse to win an Olympic competition. Arrichion was a pancratiast. Pancration was an antiquated Greek no hints of nonsense battling rivalry. It was a significant function in the Olympics and one of only a handful, barely any games we don't follow today, which is likely a direct result of how frequently these matches finished with somebody dying. Arrichion was in the last match of the opposition, fighting for the Olympic wreath, when his adversary got him a stranglehold. He was choking the life out of Arrichion and pounding his legs into Arrichion's crotch, as well, only for good measure. Arrichion was prepared to surrender, yet his coach wouldn't have it. He called out, "What a magnificent burial service discourse in the event that one can say, he didn't surrender at Olympia." That obviously propelled Arrichion, so he continued battling. He figured out how to get his rival in a leg lock and torqued his lower leg out of its attachment. It put the man through so much agony that he surrendered. Be that as it may, when he tapped out, Arrichion was at that point dead. Arrichion won the extraordinary honor of standing out forever as the principal dead individual to win the Olympic wreath. 2. Aeschylus died when an eagle dropped a tortoise on his head. Aeschylus was the primary extraordinary playwright, and he carried on with as long as he can remember with the approaching danger of his own disastrous end. A prophet had disclosed to him that he would pass on by a blow from paradise, so he lived hanging tight for some sensational destiny, for a divine being to strike him down from above or for the dividers of a house to come falling downward on him. Instead, a turtle fell on his head. While Aeschylus was in Sicily, a bird flew overhead conveying a turtle in its claws. This sort of hawk got a kick out of the chance to drop its go after rocks to break their shells. At the point when it saw Aeschylus' glossy bare head, it thought he was a stone and allowed the turtle to tortoise. Aeschylus' head pour open rather than the turtle's shell. 1. Empedocles threw himself into a volcano to become immortal. In certain sections, Diogenes expounded on Empedocles. One may see that he is egotistic. It appears to be that Diogenes was picking his words cautiously, like he was stressed over pushing a conclusion on his perusers. Thus, to let his perusers choose for themselves, he stated, "At any rate, these are his words," and afterward gave a statement from one Empedocles' poems. All hail. I go about you a godlike god. We guess this could be viewed as a little boastful. Empedocles met his end after he restored a lady whom no other doctor could fix. This, he chose, was clear verification that he was a divine being. So he got together 80 individuals, scaled to the highest point of a well of lava, declared that he was currently unfading, and afterward hopped in. He didn't exactly pull off the bouncing back out piece of the stunt, so most thought of him off as another insane individual. On the other hand, we are expounding on him today, 2,500 years after his passing. Maybe, as it were, all of the men on this rundown genuinely figured out how to live until the end of time.